Smoke covered the frozen plains of Varnus. The sky burned orange with explosions and the ground trembled as giant mechs clashed in the distance. Ethan Vale ran through the snow, his breath heavy, his rifle shaking in his hands. He had fought for 3 years in this war, but that day felt different. Something in the air felt wrong, like the planet itself was holding its breath. His squad had been ordered to hold the ridge near the ruins of an old alien city. The enemy was close, too close. Ethan looked around and saw his brothers in arms falling one by one. The sky filled with streaks of plasma fire, each flash lighting up faces twisted in fear. Communication was lost. The command line had gone silent. Only static filled his helmet. He was alone now, trapped behind enemy lines, with no backup coming. He crouched behind a rock, his armor cracked, blood dripping down his arm. The snow beneath him turned red. He tried to stay calm, but his hands trembled as he loaded another round into his weapon. Then he saw movement, a tall figure walking through the smoke. It was not human. The figure wore silver armor that glowed with faint blue veins of light. Her eyes shone like molten gold under her helmet's visor. A Thaylen warrior. The same species that had burned entire human colonies to ash. Ethan raised his weapon, but the alien did not fire. She stood still, watching him. He could feel her gaze through the visor. For a long moment, neither moved. Then the alien lowered her blade. The gesture confused him. No Thaylen ever spared a human. Ethan did not understand what game she was playing, but before he could think, the ground shook violently. From behind the ruins, a massive enemy walker appeared, its cannons charging. Ethan turned to run, but the alien grabbed his arm and pulled him down. The plasma blast hit the rock where he had just been standing, turning it into dust. Ethan stared at her, stunned. She had saved him. She spoke through a translator built into her armor. Her voice was cold, yet strangely calm. "You fight on the wrong side," she said. Ethan frowned. "Funny. I was thinking the same thing about you." The walker fired again, and they both dove behind cover. He looked at her weapon. It was unlike anything he had seen. A curved energy blade that pulsed with light. She looked back at him. "If you want to live, follow me." Ethan hesitated, but something in her tone made him trust her. Maybe it was the calmness in her voice. Maybe it was desperation. Either way, he followed. They moved together through the ruins, dodging plasma fire and collapsing walls. Ethan covered her back while she deflected blasts with her blade. For a moment, the lines between human and alien disappeared. They were just two soldiers trying to survive. As they reached an underground tunnel, Ethan could barely breathe. His oxygen tank was damaged. The alien turned toward him and removed a small device from her armor. She pressed it against his suit, and suddenly, air flowed again. He looked at her, surprised. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. She paused for a second, her golden eyes narrowing. "Because my people betrayed me too." Ethan did not understand, but there was no time to ask. The tunnel shook again. Distant roars echoed, enemy drones closing in. The alien motioned him to move faster. When they reached the exit, a cold wind hit their faces. The night had fallen, and the sky was full of falling fire. Outside, the ground was littered with wreckage, human and Thaylen bodies mixed together. It was hard to tell who had won and who had lost. Ethan walked among the ruins, his boots crunching over broken helmets. The alien followed silently, her steps heavy, her armor dimming as the power drained. In the distance, a distress beacon blinked weakly. Ethan ran toward it, hoping it was from his unit, but when he reached it, he found only ashes and a shattered flag. His heart sank. Everyone was gone. He dropped to his knees, clutching the small pendant he wore under his armor, a picture of his family back on Earth. "They are all gone," he whispered. The alien watched him for a while before speaking again. "Not all battles are meant to be won," she said quietly. Ethan looked up at her. For a moment he saw something human in her golden eyes, something like sorrow. She looked at the burning sky and spoke again. "They will come for us both now. My people. Your people. You know that, right?" Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah, I know. She extended her hand toward him. Then we survived together. He hesitated, staring at her armored hand. It felt wrong. It felt impossible. But then he remembered the way she had pulled him out of the blast, the way she had saved him when no one else would. He took her hand. Her grip was strong, steady. Name's Ethan, he said quietly. Sierra, she replied. Commander Sierra of the Thaylen Legion. They stood side by side as the fires of war burned behind them. Two enemies now bound by survival. The cold wind howled across the plains, carrying the smell of ash and iron. Ethan did not know what fate had in store, but deep inside he knew that meeting her was no accident. Something larger had begun that day, something that could change everything. As the night grew darker, Sierra turned toward him. If you stay close, she said softly, I will show you the truth behind this war. Ethan tightened his grip on his weapon and looked at the horizon, where enemy ships still blazed in the sky. Then let's start surviving, he said. And together they disappeared into the storm, unaware that their choices would soon decide the fate of two worlds. The storm above Varnus never stopped. Lightning tore through black clouds as acid rain fell on the ruined plains. Ethan and Sierra ran through the wreckage, their boots sinking into mud mixed with metal shards and blood. Behind them, engines roared. Drones were hunting them. The Thaylen machines did not tire, did not feel fear, and never missed their targets. Ethan fired at the closest drone, hitting it square in the eye. The explosion lit the night for a second before fading into silence. But for every drone he shot down, two more appeared in the distance. There's no end to them, he shouted. Sierra's armor shimmered faintly, energy lines glowing as she raised her blade. We cannot fight them all, she said firmly. We need to disappear. Disappear? Ethan asked, panting. You got a magic trick for that? She glanced at him briefly, her golden eyes glowing under the rain. Follow me, human. They darted into a collapsed transport tunnel. The air was thick with smoke and the metallic scent of fuel. Ethan's flashlight flickered over broken vehicles, human helmets, and Thaylen markings on the walls. You sure about this? He asked. Looks like a graveyard. Sierra knelt beside a fallen drone and ripped out a glowing crystal core. Not a graveyard, she said. A hiding place. Before Ethan could ask more, she pressed the crystal into the slot on her armor. The lines across her suit pulsed brighter. She whispered something in her own language, sharp, rhythmic, almost like a prayer. Then suddenly, her armor projected a faint energy field around them both. The sound outside faded away, swallowed by the hum of the shield. Ethan looked around, amazed. Are we invisible? To their sensors, yes, Sierra replied. For now. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Ethan could feel the tension between them. Two enemies trapped together, breathing the same air. He glanced at her. Her armor was cracked, her movements slower than before. She looked wounded, though she tried to hide it. Why did you save me back there? He asked finally. You could have left me to die like the rest? Sierra stayed quiet for a moment before answering. Because I saw something. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? When the walker fired at you, I saw your soul through the heat of the blast, she said softly. It burned blue. Among my people, that means fate. Ethan blinked. Fate? You're saying this was destiny? She looked away. I do not expect you to understand. He gave a small, tired laugh. You're right. I don't. They continued walking deeper into the tunnel. The air grew colder, and strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls. Ethan ran his hand across one. What is this place? Sierra touched the same symbol. Old Thaylen architecture. My ancestors built this before the war began. We used to believe Varnus was sacred ground. But humans came. Then the Empire used us both. The Empire? Ethan asked. She turned to him, her expression dark. The same force that orders your commanders. The same voice that whispers in ours. The war you think is between human and Thalan. It is not. It is a war for control. Someone else profits from it. Ethan stopped walking. You're saying both sides are being used? Sierra nodded slowly. Yes. My fleet betrayed me because I tried to expose it. That is why they want me dead. He looked at her differently then. Not as an enemy, but as someone carrying a burden too heavy for one person. And now I'm stuck in the middle, he muttered. Sierra gave a faint smile. No, Ethan Vale. You are exactly where you are meant to be. Before he could respond, a deep rumble shook the ground. The tunnel lights flickered. Something massive was moving above them. Ethan raised his weapon. What now? Sierra pressed her hand to the wall, eyes closing as if listening to the vibrations. Not drones, she whispered. Something worse. The ceiling cracked open, and a creature fell through, a mechanical beast, part metal, part flesh. Its glowing red eyes locked on them. Ethan fired instantly, but the bullets bounced off its hide. The creature roared, its voice echoing through the tunnels. Sierra stepped in front of him, her armor flaring to life. Stay behind me, she shouted. Her blade clashed against the creature's claws, sparks flying with every strike. Ethan aimed for the joints, hitting one weak spot. The creature stumbled but lunged again, pinning Sierra to the ground. Ethan ran forward, stabbing his combat knife into the creature's neck. The beast screamed and collapsed, its body twitching before going still. Breathing hard, Ethan helped Sierra up. You good? She nodded weakly. Her armor was cracked open at the shoulder, glowing liquid seeping out. I will live, she said quietly. He tore off a piece of his uniform and tied it around her wound. You saved my life again, he said. Sierra looked at him, her expression unreadable. You saved mine too. They stared at each other for a moment, two soldiers no longer sure what side they were on. Outside, the thunder grew louder. The storm had reached its peak. Ethan checked his scanner. There's an old relay station 10 miles east, he said. If we can reach it, maybe we can send a signal. Sierra nodded. Then we move at dawn. As they rested in the dark, Ethan lay awake, listening to the faint hum of her armor. He wondered what fate truly meant to someone like her. Why had she, a Thalan commander, risked everything to save a human soldier? When he finally looked up, she was watching him too. Their eyes met through the dim light, and for a brief second, the silence between them felt almost peaceful. Tomorrow, she said quietly, the hunt begins again. Ethan nodded, his voice low. Then we'll face it together. Outside, the first light of dawn broke through the storm clouds, painting the ruined world in pale gold. Somewhere far above them, both human and Thalan ships searched for their missing soldiers, two enemies who had now become fugitives, but neither of them cared about the war anymore. Not tonight. Tonight they were just survivors sharing the same sky. The sun rose weak and red through the clouds over Varney. Smoke from the endless fires hung heavy in the air. Ethan and Sierra walked through the wasteland, their boots crunching over metal debris and bones half buried in ash. The planet had once been home to millions. Now it was nothing but a graveyard for two armies that had forgotten why they were fighting. Ethan's helmet scanner flickered weakly. Signal's still faint, he muttered. If we keep moving east, we might find the old relay tower. Sierra's armor dimmed with every step. She had not recharged since the night before. Her breathing was steady but labored. She carried her energy blade loosely, her hand trembling slightly. Ethan noticed but said nothing. He knew she would rather die than show weakness. They climbed over the rusted remains of a crashed ship. The hull still bore the insignia of the Thalan Legion, a crescent and star scorched black by fire. Sierra paused, her gaze locked on the symbol. For a moment, she looked like she was staring at a memory she wished she could forget. Ethan slowed down beside her. Was it yours? He asked quietly. She nodded once. My command ship, before they turned on me. He looked at her face, streaked with dust and light reflecting off her cracked armor. They did not just turn on you, he said. They tried to erase you. She gave a small, bitter smile. The Thalan way. If one breaks the chain, they destroy the link. Before Ethan could reply, his scanner beeped. A faint beacon pulsed in the distance. There, he said. That must be the relay station. They moved quickly, keeping low to the ground. The station stood on a hill, an old human outpost, half buried, half destroyed. A comm tower leaned to one side, its panels cracked but still intact. For the first time, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. If this works, we can send a distress call. Maybe someone will pick us up. Sierra gave him a long look. And if they do, will they see me as your ally? Or your prisoner? Ethan hesitated. The question stung because he did not have an answer. Let's worry about that when we're off this rock, he said finally. They climbed the stairs into the station. Inside, dust floated in thin rays of light cutting through the broken roof. The place had been abandoned for years, but the generator still hummed faintly beneath the floor. Ethan began working on the comm panel, connecting wires, cleaning circuits, anything to bring it back to life. Sierra stood watch near the doorway, her eyes scanning the horizon. The silence between them was heavy but not hostile. It was the silence of two people who understood that every word might be their last. After a few minutes, the console blinked. Ethan grinned. Got it. He typed rapidly, sending an emergency signal to any nearby human fleet. If someone's listening, we've got a chance. But before he could finish, the screen flashed red. Sierra turned sharply. What's wrong? Ethan's heart sank. They're tracking the signal. Thalen frequency intercepted it. Almost instantly, the ground outside shook. The air filled with the sound of engines. Shadows passed over the building. Sierra cursed under her breath. They found us. The first blast hit the side of the tower, blowing a hole through the wall. Ethan fell backward, covering his head as debris rained down. Sierra pulled him to his feet. Move! They ran down the corridor, the air filled with smoke and fire. Outside, Thalen dropships were landing, soldiers pouring out like a tide of steel. Sierra looked at Ethan. They are not here to capture us. He raised his weapon. Then we fight. They took cover behind the rubble as plasma bolts screamed past them. Ethan returned fire, dropping 2 soldiers. Sierra leapt forward, her blade a streak of blue light cutting through armor and steel. Every move she made was precise, controlled, and furious. But there were too many. Back inside. Ethan shouted. They retreated into the lower levels of the outpost. Sparks rained from the ceiling as the structure groaned under the bombardment. Ethan's ammo counter blinked red, almost empty. He tossed his last grenade down the hallway, buying them seconds. Sierra collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. A wound glowed red on her side. You must go, she said. They want me, not you. Ethan knelt beside her. Not a chance. I am not leaving you behind. Her golden eyes flickered with emotion, something soft and unsure. Why risk your life for me? He looked at her, the words coming out before he could stop them. Because you already risked yours for me, twice. Outside, heavy footsteps echoed. Armored Thalen soldiers closing in. Sierra pushed herself up, wincing in pain. Then we ended together. Ethan smiled faintly. Wouldn't have it any other way. They stood side by side in the darkness, facing the entrance as the door exploded inward. Fire and smoke filled the room. The two fought like a single force, human and alien, back to back, their weapons moving as one. When the last soldier fell, silence returned. The building shook again, but this time it was not from explosions, it was collapsing. Ethan grabbed Sierra's arm and pulled her toward the exit. They barely made it out before the entire tower fell in on itself, burying the enemy corpses beneath stone and steel. They collapsed outside, gasping for breath. Above them, the sky was black and red, the storm swallowing the light. Ethan looked at her, still alive beside him, her hand pressed to her wound. That was close, he said, trying to catch his breath. Sierra gave a weak nod. We are both outlaws now. No home to return to. He glanced at her, half smiling. Then maybe we build our own. She turned her head slowly, studying him as if seeing him for the first time. You speak like one of us, she said softly. He laughed lightly. Maybe I am. The wind howled through the ruins as the two of them stared into the endless horizon. They had lost everything, yet in that loss something new had begun. Neither of them knew it yet, but the war had changed that day. Not because of victory or defeat, but because a human and an alien had chosen to stand together. The storm passed, leaving the world silent again. And under that silence, a fragile bond began to take root, one that would soon shake the stars themselves. The storm on Varnus had calmed, but inside Ethan's heart, a new kind of storm was growing. He and Sierra had survived the attack on the outpost, but their supplies were gone, their armor damaged, and both armies now branded them as traitors. For days they traveled through the dead valleys, following the magnetic trails of old ships. The silence between them had changed. It was no longer full of suspicion, but something deeper, something unspoken. At night, they built small fires and watched the fading sparks drift into the sky. Ethan often caught himself staring at her across the flames, her face lit by the soft blue glow of her armor's core. Her eyes were not the eyes of a monster. They were tired, sad, and somehow human. He tossed a piece of metal into the fire. "You really think there's anyone left who'll help us?" Sierra looked up at the dark horizon. "Not in this system," she said quietly. "But there is a place beyond the rift belt. A moon called Nerath. My people used it as a refuge once." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "A moon? You're saying we can get off this planet?" She nodded. "If we can find a ship." "Yeah," he muttered. "Just need a working spaceship in a war zone. Easy." To his surprise, Sierra smiled faintly. "You humans always use humor when death stands close. Strange." He shrugged. "Keeps us sane." That night, as the wind howled outside their cave shelter, Ethan tried to rest. But his mind was restless. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her falling under enemy fire, her armor breaking, her hand reaching for him. She was a warrior, yes, but also someone lost, someone carrying guilt. He turned toward her. "Sierra," he said softly, "why did your people really betray you?" Her gaze stayed on the flames for a moment before she spoke. "Because I disobeyed the council. They ordered me to destroy a colony of your people. I refused." Ethan sat up. "You refused a direct order." Ethan's heart sank. "So they punished you for having mercy." "I believed mercy was strength," she said, her voice steady but hollow. "But my world did not agree." He watched her face in the flickering light. "Maybe you were born on the wrong side," he said quietly. Sierra looked at him then, her golden eyes reflecting the firelight. "Or maybe there are no sides anymore, only those who still remember what it means to feel." Before Ethan could respond, the ground shook. A low, deep rumble rolled through the cave walls. Sierra stood instantly, her armor reactivating. "Patrol drones," she said. "They are sweeping the valley." Ethan grabbed his rifle. "We can't fight them head on." "No," Sierra agreed. "We run." They raced through the tunnels, the echo of metal footsteps closing in behind them. The drone's red light sliced through the dark like blades. One beam caught Ethan's shoulder, burning through his armor. He stumbled, groaning. Sierra turned back and fired her weapon, the blue blast cutting two drones in half. "Keep moving," she shouted. They burst out of the cave into the open desert. Above them, lightning danced across the sky as the drones swarmed like insects. Sierra activated a pulse emitter, creating a field of static that confused the machines. For a few precious seconds, the night was theirs. Ethan collapsed beside a broken transport craft buried in the sand. "That was too close," he panted. Sierra helped him sit. Her hands were gentle despite the strength behind them. "You fight well," she said softly. "For someone not trained for this," he chuckled. "You'd be surprised how fast humans learn when death's chasing them." She gave a faint nod, then looked at the old transport ship. Its wings were cracked, but its engine bay was intact. "This can fly," she said, kneeling beside it. Ethan blinked. "You can fix that?" "I can try." Hours passed as she worked in silence. Ethan watched her with admiration and confusion. Her focus, her patience, the quiet determination in her every movement, it reminded him of what humanity had lost in this endless war. Finally, the engine roared weakly to life. Dust blew across the sand. Sierra turned to him with the faintest smile. "We have a way out," Ethan grinned. "Then let's get off this cursed planet." They boarded the ship. The cockpit was cramped, the controls cracked and ancient, but when the engines lifted them off the ground, Ethan felt a strange wave of relief. For the first time in weeks, he saw the world below shrinking beneath them. As they broke through the atmosphere, the blackness of space unfolded around them, endless, silent, beautiful. Stars shimmered like frozen tears. Sierra sat beside him, her hand gripping the throttle. "Destination Nerath," she said. "Let's hope your moon still exists," Ethan replied. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the ship filled the silence. Then Sierra looked at him. "Ethan, do you ever wonder why fate brought us together?" He turned to her. "Maybe it wasn't fate. Maybe it was choice." Her lips curved slightly. "A dangerous choice. Maybe the best one I ever made." The ship trembled as they entered hyperspace. Outside, the stars stretched into lines of light. But even in the safety of the void, danger followed. A faint signal blinked on Sierra's console, a Thalen bounty beacon. Her face darkened. They marked us both, she said. We are fugitives now, Ethan smirked. Then we'd better make running look good. She gave a rare laugh, low and soft. You humans, she whispered. Always joking before death? He looked out the window at the stars. Nah, he said quietly. Just reminding death it can't catch us yet. And as the ship vanished into the vastness of space, 2 exiled warriors, one human, one alien, left their broken worlds behind. Unaware that the galaxy itself was about to remember their names, the ship drifted through deep space like a wounded bird. Sparks flickered from the control panels and warning lights blinked red. They had made it off Varnus, but their escape had cost them dearly. The engines were failing and the air was thin. Ethan sat in the co-pilot seat, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted the oxygen flow. Across from him, Syrah's armor was dim, her movements slow, her strength fading. We're losing power, he muttered. If we don't land soon, there is a moon nearby, Syrah interrupted. Her voice was calm but weaker than before. Uncharted. We might survive there. Ethan looked at the map. The moon was small and dark, its surface marked with frozen craters. It was no one's home, but maybe it could be theirs. Then let's make it, he said, gripping the controls. The ship rattled violently as it entered the moon's thin atmosphere. Flames licked across the hull. Ethan fought the controls with every ounce of strength he had left. Syrah placed her hand over his. Her fingers steadied despite the shaking. Trust me, she said quietly. He nodded. Always. They hit the surface hard. The impact threw them against their seats. Metal screamed and cracked. Then, silence. When Ethan opened his eyes, everything was cold. The ship was half buried in snow. The stars above were clearer than he had ever seen, burning bright in a sky untouched by war. He unstrapped himself and crawled towards Syrah. Her armor was damaged beyond repair, the once bright energy lines fading like dying embers. Syrah, he said, shaking her shoulder gently. Hey, come on. Stay with me. Her eyes opened slowly. We made it? He smiled weakly. Barely, but yeah. We made it. They stumbled out into the open. The moon's surface was silent except for the wind. A frozen wasteland stretched endlessly before them, glowing faintly under the distant starlight. Ethan helped her walk, their footprints the only sign of life. They found shelter inside a shallow cave. Ethan lit a small fire from the remains of their emergency kit. The warmth filled the air with the smell of smoke and metal. He looked at Syrah. Her helmet lay beside her, and for the first time her face was fully visible. Her skin shimmered faintly under the light, smooth like crystal, yet soft where the light caught her cheeks. Her eyes were tired but still carried the golden glow that had haunted him since the day they met. He sat beside her, wrapping his coat around her shoulders. You need rest, he said quietly. I do not dream like you humans, she murmured. When I close my eyes, I see memories, then see good ones, Ethan said with a faint smile. Syrah looked at him for a long moment. You should have left me behind, she said. You could have gone home, Ethan laughed softly. Home? After everything we've seen, do you really think I could just go back and pretend nothing happened? Her eyes softened. Humans are strange creatures. Yeah, he said. We love even when we shouldn't. The silence that followed was deep but not empty. The stars shimmered faintly through the cave entrance, casting silver light across her face. Ethan leaned back against the wall, his hand brushing against hers. He felt her fingers twitch, then slowly close around his. She turned to him, her voice barely a whisper. In my world, she said, there is a ritual among the Thalen. When 2 souls survive death together, they are bound for the rest of their lives. We call it the bond of ashes. Ethan looked at her hand in his. Sounds sacred. It is more than sacred, she said. It is forever. Her gaze held his, and for the first time since the war began, Ethan felt peace. Not victory, not relief, just peace. The fire flickered between them, painting gold across her silver skin. She reached into the remains of her armor and pulled out a small crystal shard that pulsed faintly with light. Among my people, she said softly, this is given only once. To the one who shares your fate. Ethan blinked, unsure what to say. Syrah, are you? She smiled faintly. If I were human, I believe you would call this a proposal. The words froze him. The battlefield, the chaos, the death, it all faded. All that remained was her voice, her hand, and the way she looked at him as though he was the last light in the universe. He took the shard slowly, feeling its warmth against his palm. "I don't have a ring," he said quietly, "but I have something better." He pulled out the metal pendant he had worn since the start of the war, a small charm from his mother, engraved with the symbol of Earth. He placed it in her hand. "Now we're even." She studied it carefully, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled, and it was softer than anything he had ever seen. "You humans always find beauty in ruin," she said. "Perhaps that is your greatest power." He leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Or maybe it's our curse." Outside, the wind began to rise. The stars shimmered brighter, almost as if they were watching. Sira reached forward and touched his cheek. Her hand was cold, but the touch carried warmth that reached straight into his heart. "You once asked me why I saved you," she said. "Now I know. Because your soul called to mine before we ever met." Ethan could not speak. He just looked at her, the alien warrior who had once been his enemy. Now the reason he still breathed. She leaned her forehead against his. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Until the stars fade." He nodded. "I'm not going anywhere." And in that frozen cave, under a sky full of silent stars, a human and an alien made a promise that defied everything their worlds had ever believed. When the fire finally burned low, Ethan wrapped his arm around her and looked out into the endless dark. "You think they'll ever believe our story?" he asked softly. Sira closed her eyes. "Maybe not," she said, "but they will feel its echo." Above them, the stars seemed to pulse once, bright, alive, eternal. The universe would move on, wars would rise and fall, but somewhere in the frozen quiet of that forgotten moon, love had found its voice between two hearts that were never meant to meet, and that voice would never fade.